Good evening. Tonight's top stories are Kareem Hunt signed with the Saints, then he didn't sign with the Saints, and now he's going to be visiting with the Indianapolis Colts. So who knows where Kareem Hunt's going to wind up. And we have all sorts of NFL training camp notes, news, and we have one of the best fantasy minds with us tonight. Theo, we all are trying to be more like Matt Damon. Theo Greminger.
You know, when I was at the beach, so I got a little color to me. I'm a little tan. Seth, I'm excited to talk to you. Today was weird. There was like a lot of hysteria with Saints drafters. It's been a very cheap way of searching for early season production to go for Jamal Williams, because you have those 3 games where he's going to get the opportunities. So whether it's underdog or FFPC, people were diving into that. And then you have the Kendre Miller hive. And I'm kind of a sneaky Kendre Miller guy. I know you like yourself some Kendre Miller. So you have the flip side of the Jamal Williams hive is you have this 21-year-old who was drafted on day 2, and he's going to get that work because Jamal Williams has never been a guy who's commanded an entire backfield to himself. So you had 2 big factions, and you had a couple of double down drafters that said, hey, I'm going to take Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller, and I'm going to bet that Alvin Kamara is cooked, or I'm going to bet that he just comes back slow, and I'm going to make sure at least I have one big piece of it. So today was a big uproar for these guys because we had the Kareem Hunt rumors, and then I was on the phone, and you send me a text message or called me and was like, what's this Kareem Hunt Indianapolis thing? And I'm like, what? And then I look at it, and it was the big switcheroo, the rug got pulled out from under us. So it was just a wild day, 30 days out from the season, and we have to react to the news. And today was a little wild, right?
Yeah, why don't we start right there with Kareem Hunt? Obviously, out of these 2 situations, I think if you are pro Kareem Hunt, you're probably hoping that he winds up in Indianapolis with the whole weirdness of Jonathan Taylor. It's just 2 really bizarre situations, but I'm assuming the preferred destination is probably Indy, I'm guessing.
So if you're still betting on Kareem Hunt, I don't know. The whole thing is the thing that was funny. The thing that was funny about Kareem Hunt is Kareem Hunt's a guy that 2 seasons ago and 3 seasons ago was just phenomenal. You put him in there per touch basis, killer. Doesn't matter that he's playing with Nick Chubb. He's still putting up points. He had a RB2 season, an RB1 season. And then last season we saw, sort of a drop. What was kind of striking to me was the Browns, who had Kareem Hunt, and they made a point of kind of kicking him in the butt on the way out the door and criticizing him, saying he lost explosiveness. So they're kind of explaining to their fan base why they didn't bring him back. But you don't see Dallas, be oh, Zeke, he's gone, he's definitely not the same player he was. You usually have a little bit of you take the high ground when a guy's leaving and he's been a productive player for you. But they made a point of saying that he was kind of cooked. And then you see Kareem Hunt kind of sit there on the market for so long. So the market kind of told you about Kareem Hunt, and we've talked about it on Player Profiler for a while about how these backs, the Kareem Hunts, the Leonard Fournettes, these guys are waiting for an injury situation to enter in. And that might have been their way to sign with somebody and kind of be selective about where they go for touches. So Indianapolis makes a lot of sense. Jonathan Taylor's not on the field, conflicting reports about his health, his contract. And we also have the kind of indecision about who the actual handcuff is. You have the Deion Jacksons, you have the Evan Holes. So Kareem Hunt, you're right. If you've been drafting Kareem Hunt in the 17th round, 16th round on underdog, then a situation like Indianapolis, you can talk yourself into. I just think we're putting a lot of effort into thinking about a guy who might be kind of cooked.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, there's news that you should pay attention to and news that you shouldn't pay attention to. And obviously this is the news of the day, but you wonder if it even matters where he goes, because there are players, I'm just going to be honest, I know it might not be the sexiest thing to say, but if you're giving me the choice between somebody like Fournette, who's gone around the same area, who's still a free agent, I think Fournette probably has more upside than Hunt in either one of those situations. I'd take the mystery of Fournette over Kareem Hunt with either one of those two. Like, what say you to that? Like, are there, to me, there's probably some other players that you prefer.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the Fournette over Hunt train. I'm on the Fournette over Zeke train. Like Fournette, I think fills a need as a pass catcher for a lot of these teams, and I think he's like the kind of guy that's commanded targets everywhere. I think that Fournette is an interesting one if he signs. I think that he's the kind of guy that, again, like there was rumors of Fournette going to New England. That didn't happen. But I think we'll hear more and more rumors as these weeks like move along. And more of these running backs that we're seeing kind of slip down in ADP where they think they're going to get back on the field. But if they don't, maybe you see a couple of like, we have the J.K. Dobbins situation. We talked about Jonathan Taylor. Josh Jacobs is still on the sideline, not playing. So there's a lot of backfields that are kind of up in the air. Breece Hall. And then when we look at Seattle loses Kenny McIntosh, at least for a few weeks. And we had Charbonnet miss, then Charbonnet came back, and then you have Ken Walker get banged up. Like, you have a lot of backfields that are kind of sketchy right now. So I think you'll start to see the dominoes fall. One backfield that I'm looking at specifically is Cleveland, because Jerome Ford had moved up to like high-end handcuff territory. Jerome Ford did nothing as a rookie. We liked him at Cincinnati at Player Profiler. Former Alabama Crimson Tide running back transfers to Cincinnati, was on that magical team with Desmond Ridder, Alec Pierce. That was a fun offense. And he was kind of moved up. Like Jerome Ford, despite a small sample size, has like moved way up in ADP. And now he goes down. So if that could be one, Seth, that I think like makes sense for a veteran, where Cleveland fancies themselves a contender. They have a lot of pieces in place, but backup running back is something they need to address, because, Felton is more like a true satellite back. So if Jerome Ford really is banged up, I think you'll see one of the veterans sign there personally.
Yeah. And I would prefer Fournette or Zeke in Cleveland over Kareem Hunt in either one of those situations. If you're making me choose veteran running back, mystery time, I don't even know.
See, I'm not. And it's funny, like running back is like the spot where we talk about like running backs not mattering. Like a lot of times those younger guys who play like 3-4 weeks, those are the guys you end up picking up on waivers and really hitting. Mm-hmm. Like you get the Devonta Freeman type situations where you saw Devonta Freeman was like a Baltimore fill-in, gave you a bunch of like top 25 weeks, but they're compilers. They get to be compilers. Dalvin Cook, I think, still has a little bit left in the tank. I think he's like a more attractive than what these other guys are. And I think he wants more money than what these other guys are going to get. So I kind of put him in his own little boat, but he also had some regression last year. Like he was in a big time offense, but if you look at the raw rushing totals to end the season, like even Dalvin took a little bit of step back. So it's a choppy market for running backs, Seth. It makes you just want to be like drafting wide receivers and just chilling out.
Yeah. How are you? I have to ask you this because we honestly haven't had a chance to talk about this. How are you approaching Jonathan Taylor in some of your drafts? I've seen him go in the late second. Sometimes he's dropping to the third round. Like what advice would you give to some fantasy gamers? Like, is he a value? Do you have to start drafting some Jonathan Taylor in the third round if he's dropping there?
So in underdog, I've been taking some Taylor. Like I'm doing a ton of these underdog drafts, and in best ball, where there's no management, you have to draft like you're correct. Third round, Jonathan Taylor could be like the absolute hammer, if it happens. So it's hard for me to not pull the trigger on him in these best ball builds. When it comes to like some of these high stakes teams, like the FFPC and some of the FFPC competitors, I haven't had to make the decision really. It just hasn't fallen into place. I'm in one slow one now where I'm splitting a team with Biplap Mandel, who's a really big time high stakes guy. And we had the 10th overall pick, and I believe he was obviously not in consideration for us when we picked in the second round. And then he was gone by the time we picked at the 310. So that was not there. And then it all kind of depends on where you're at. I do think that there's an argument to be made that if you get the 101 with Justin Jefferson and then Taylor comes back to the 2-3 turn, you could end up building a team that's kind of unbeatable if Taylor gets back to like an 18-point per game type. He doesn't have to give you 25 points per game like he did in 2021. He just has to give you like that really high-end RB1 numbers. So it all comes down to risk tolerance, Seth. It all comes down to how you want to build your teams. I will say that the one thing about drafting one of these running backs, whether it's Taylor, whether it's Breece Hall, whether it's J.K. Dobbins, is it makes you have to draft more running backs because you have to kind of cover yourself on your build. And I don't know, this year it's like wide receiver dries up so quickly that it kind of makes me feel like I've got to use 2 early picks on a running back if I take Taylor early. At the end of the day, I think everything's going to kind of work out with Taylor. I'm optimistic with it. But at the end of the day, I haven't really had to make that like big money decision to take him. I believe Billy Muzio was in a high stakes draft this week, and I think he saw 3rd round Taylor. I believe that was the case. Billy tweeted out the draft board, but it's been more of like an underdog type decision for me than like a true redraft one. But it's wild, and Josh Jacobs is wild now too. Josh Jacobs is, you're seeing him kind of living at the end of the 3rd round, and he's not hurt. This is just a contract situation. So, like, you're seeing Zamir White start to go in the 10th round, and you're seeing, and we dropped an article about this. Seth is the best editor in the game and also a great podcaster, and also a baseball podcaster too. You notice by the baseballism hat he's wearing right now. Mm-hmm. We dropped an article about some of these significant ADP risers and fallers. We looked at FFPC, but Josh Jacobs was definitely in one of the fallers. Like, it's crazy. Josh Jacobs, if I told you 4 months ago he'd be going in the beginning of the 4th round once in a while, you'd say I was nuts. But we are here, and people are just kind of nervous about drafting these guys, especially when it's like the perfect storm of wide receiver dries up, and you have to attack that wide receiver position, or you like get left holding the bag, where you can wait on running back. And like Seth, if you don't want to take these risky guys, like there's all these running backs in round 5, running backs in round 4 that you can dive into. And at the end of the day, it's like, do you really want to have that sort of like risk tolerance with your build? It depends on how many teams you draft. It depends on, how much you're swinging for upside, in my opinion. I think it's a lot of factors.
Yeah, and you should go check out that article. Theo wrote it. We published it today. It's FFPC Risers and Fallers, where he talks about Josh Jacobs and Breece Hall and J.K. Dobbins as these running backs that are falling down for different reasons, right? You talked about Dobbins or Josh Jacobs, just the contract situation. Breece Hall is obviously coming off of an injury. That's a little scary if you're drafting him. And then Dobbins, similar thing, there's this weird pup situation going on with him where it appears holding out for a contract, but technically he's on the pup. So yeah, I think if you're playing if you're in a draft for him, like in these underdog drafts, personally, I kind of lean into this volatility. So yes, I'll take Jonathan Taylor in the 3rd round. I'll take Breece Hall if he falls to the 4th round, but it's all about ADPs for me in those contests. So I think you're right. I think this Jonathan Taylor saga is gonna correct itself. I think Jonathan Taylor plays, and I think the same is true for J.K. Dobbins too. So I'm just treating it like getting a discount while I can. And in high stakes, you're right. That's a tougher decision to make on Jonathan Taylor in high stakes. I don't play in the high stakes leagues like you do. I'm in the underdog streets, and I do some lower level FFPC stuff. So the decision isn't, I'm like, yeah, Jonathan Taylor, 3rd round, no problem. But yeah, if it's a, $1,000 draft, it's a little bit different conversation.
And shout out to Itinerary Varies. He says, if you guys have experienced any success in the FPC tournament, the FPC, the Football Players Championship tournament on FFPC is a great tournament. It's a great way to get yourself into some FFPCs, and you can use the code Underworld for $25 off. And yeah, I've done pretty well in that one. I have this year not as many entries as some years past. I'm a little busy over here with Seth. Yeah. But I do have a couple. I'm actually in a slow one right now. I'm doing a slow one right now. I like doing a lot of these slow drafts this time of year in pretty much wherever I can, because I have kids and I have a lot of, we're grinding right now. Seth and I talk to Seth more than I talk to my wife at this time of year.
Yeah.
And then when the season
Yeah.
starts, I think we'll get back to normal a little bit. But this is really grind time for us.
Oh yeah, we're grinding every day to make sure you guys get the best quality content possible. Nobody does it better than Player Profiler. But Theo, I do want to, we're getting close to. I knew this would happen because once you get you talking about high stakes and strategy and stuff, we could go for days. But I do want to get your take on some of the camp notes and news from around the league. So the first player on the docket is James Cook, and it looks like James Cook has been seeing most of the first team reps. Is James Cook somebody that, in your opinion, is being drafted too low or too high, or what's your opinion on James Cook?
I think James Cook, by the time we draft, so the big weekend for most drafts in America is Labor Day weekend. That's like when a lot of people schedule their drafts around the holiday weekend. I think by the time we're drafting then, he's going to be a lock 6th round pick. Because right now you're starting to see him creep in the 6th. I was drafting a ton of James Cook at the beginning of the year in the 8th, 7th. I was big on James Cook. He's been a guy we've argued about on numerous Player Profiler podcasts, but he's a camp hype guy, and they're also talking him up. The Buffalo Bills organization's talking him up. The beat reporters are talking him up, and he's got the pass catching ability, and he's also the kind of the unknown upside guy that people always want this time of year. So I think he's going to sneak inside the top 24 personally, but right now, he's moved up. 6 weeks ago, the question was, are you on James Cook or Damian Harris? If you follow ADP, he's really put a gap into Harris. And I think that it's the receiving work plus the big playability makes James Cook kind of a very attractive candidate. And if you're going to be drafting running backs in that range, you want guys that kind of beat ADP. And I think James Cook, he has that in his range of outcomes. It's not going to take a historical season for him to get to running back 18. And if you're drafting running back 27 and he finishes running back 18, it's an ADP win. I do think it gets to a point where if he moves up too much, I might be out, but I've already got a lot of them.
Yeah, so you're in a good spot. He number 1 in breakaway run rate amongst running backs last season. So the big play ability is there. The pass catching ability is there. You would think that the Bills would probably want to run Josh Allen on less of these stupid quarterback sweeps and dump the ball off more to James Cook. I would think that they would want to do that. But I think where he's going right now, because I think he's going a little bit later in some of these underdog drafts. I mean, that's the running back that I'm targeting for sure.
And James underdog, Cook. It's great because you don't have to worry about the Damian Harris weeks. You just need to get where you're drafting him an underdog as your RB3, RB4 even for some RB heavy builds. He's a really good best ball candidate because we love that offense, and we love the big playability that Seth talked about.
Yeah, next player or next situation, I have to talk to you about my Bears. All right, so Khalil Herbert's currently at least on the initial depth chart, the number 1 running back ahead of Donta Foreman, ahead of Roschon Johnson. Do you think Khalil Herbert is ultimately the running back that leads this team in opportunities in 2023?
I think he could be the one that leads the Bears in opportunities, but I still am on Roschon because I think Roschon's cheap. And I think that if you need running back points in week 1, then I would take Khalil Herbert. If you draft a true zero team or a hero team and you want to plug a Bears running back in week 1, I'm going Khalil. But if I can wait a few weeks, I think Roschon, there's a couple of clips of him catching the ball at Bears camp where he looks good. There's been clips of him pass blocking. I think he's got the well-rounded skill set. He has higher draft capital than Khalil Herbert, and it's this coaching staff drafting him as opposed to inheriting him like they did before. So I think there's a lot of stuff to like about Roschon, and also Roschon's cheap. They're all cheap though. I do think that there's an argument that even if you think, hey, Theo's stupid, don't take Roschon. I'm a Herbert guy, or Seth and Theo are both wrong. The back they need to talk about is Donta Foreman. I think at the end of the day, take a stab on the Bears backfield in your fantasy drafts, because if one hits, I think they had 11 or 12 weeks last year where they hit top 25 numbers out of the running back position. So they gave you basically RB2 numbers. A back in that backfield gave you RB2 numbers 11 times, which was significant because they were very low scoring last year. This year, I believe they were, Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere around 22nd in scoring. They were pretty low, definitely bottom third.
They got off to a really rough start early in that year. And then they kind of took off in the middle, and then it was right back to, when Fields got hurt toward the end. So yeah, you're right.
So if they legitimately look like a kind of team that could add a few points per game this year. So like there's going to be more opportunities for touchdowns. Plus they have the Justin Fields potentially, potentially running for less because what he did last year was so historical, and they've added, weapons for him. So I think that taking a stab on a Bears running back is a fine thing to do. And I think double tapping them in best ball, taking two of them, it's still a bet, because if the third one becomes a thing, you're burned. But I think a double tap of the Chicago running back situation in like an underdog or FFPC best ball, there's something to be said with that, because there's going to be points scored by this team. I think that they're a team that's going to break out. I think they're a team that can win the division. I think they're like the dark horse in the North. I do believe in Justin Fields, and I believe in Eberflus in year 2, looking a lot smarter than he did at the beginning of last season when we thought he was like the worst offensive mind in the history of football.
Yeah, I think I could talk about this for days, but I'll keep it short. I think the Bears really had to run with Fields out of necessity because they didn't have a good offensive line. They didn't have the dynamic pass catchers. Like they had Mooney, but then they lost Mooney in the middle of the year, I think like week 12 or 13 or something like that. So a lot of this running was, this is what we have to do because our offensive line stinks in pass protection and we don't have the pass catchers. Now the offensive line's better. Now they have DJ Moore. So it should be better. I'm not saying they're going to be top half of the NFL in pass attempts, but it's going to be like if they finish 25th, 26th, which I think is reasonable, that's a lot more passing volume than we saw last year. And it's going to be more opportunities for people like, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. And, I think Roschon's the most versatile running back out of the three. I think he can do everything. I think he can pass protect. I think he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can run in between the tackles. So I think eventually Roschon's going to be the guy. I don't know. It's just a matter of how fast he proves that he's an NFL caliber running back. I think it could be as quick as mid-season. I said week 6, I think on Twitter earlier. I think that's very possible. But at where he's going, I think he's gone in the 150s.
I took him in like the right around the 12-13 turn on an FPC draft this week. So like he's right in that wheelhouse of a place where he's not going to hurt you if you miss on him, but he could return value. And again, like I don't care about the beginning of the year for this team. Let him get his feet set. And one thing that has been apparent, like we talk about beat reporters, I like when there's like positivity throughout. And there's a number of these Chicago Bears beat reporters have said, this is the best the offense has looked in years and years and years. And there's things they're doing that are like normalizing them as an offense. Like they've been terrible for getting yak. They've either like, there's no wide receivers who have been able to get a ton of yak. It's been downfield stuff, but now they have DJ Moore. So they're going to have that yak ability to go with, the incredible running ability of Fields. And they have a ton of team speed. So I think that's going to open everything up as well. Like in terms of, if we're talking about the fastest wide receiver cores in football, Bears are right up there. Like Scott is a burner. DJ Moore is a burner. Mooney is a burner. Claypool is a burner. All those guys can fly. Like those are all like 4-3 types, 4-4 types. And Bears are going to be fun, Seth. You're going to have a fun year.
Yeah, I think they're going to be able to put up points for sure. I think the NFC North is I don't know if it's sneaky shootout. I think it's just a plain shootout division with some of the defenses that are going to be in there. Like Minnesota's not going to be they didn't do much to improve their defense. Detroit made what we think are a bunch of reaches. Like they drafted Jack Campbell on defense. They made some improvements, but I think it's still going to be a division where a lot of points are put up. We do have a question in the chat. Roschon or Jalen Warren end of draft PPR?
I like that one. I'm going to go Jalen Warren because I think Jalen Warren, there's less competition for him. Jalen Warren is the clear handcuff, and Jalen Warren is also a handcuff plus, where Jalen Warren had like 29 catches last year as a rookie. Najee Harris goes from 70 receptions as a rookie down to the 40s. And it wasn't just because Big Ben was not the quarterback. It was because, hey, they're throwing to this undrafted free agent. And I think Jalen Warren is kind of Tomlin's guy. Like Tomlin loves Jalen Warren. And again, like Roschon could be a thing, but I think Jalen Warren's going to give you the ability to like plug a guy into the flex and get 10 points, even on weeks that Najee's playing. And if Najee misses, Jalen Warren's going to catch a ton of passes.
I love both of those running backs because you're right. Jalen Warren's the pure handcuff to Najee. So if anything happens, I mean, could have a bell cow role right there. And he showed us enough last year. I think he had more yards per touch on average than Najee Harris. So I think Najee's still going to get his volume, but Jalen Warren's going to have a role on this team too, with the upside if Najee does miss of a huge workload.
And then shout out to Jack Kavanaugh, Harry Snowman in the chat. Jack will be back soon, probably in a day or two. But Seth and I are happy to fill in today. Mm-hmm. This is always fun to step into Player Profiler Today. I know you did this on crossover week, Seth, right?
I did. It's always a lot of fun to do this when Jack lets us. Yeah, Jack's taking a few days off, much deserved. So shout out to him for letting Theo and I do this. One more, Theo. We'll get you out on this. And this
we can go two more.
I'll go two more.
Yeah,
all right.
We'll push it.
We'll push it. All right. So reports at a camp. We have another report from Jacksonville. Tank Bigsby is apparently impressing the coaches in Jacksonville and showing like excellent speed and athleticism. So where do you value Tank Bigsby? Are you drafting Tank Bigsby? And are you drafting? How do you evaluate this Jacksonville backfield? Who are you more interested in, like ETN at value or Bigsby at value?
I'm probably drafting more Bigsby. Like I like ETN, but again, ETN goes in I like ETN a lot, but ETN goes in a spot in the draft where like wide receiver can really crush you if you miss on some of those guys. I really don't mind ETN though. I do think he's the starter. I think he's clearly the starter, but I think Bigsby is one of the best handcuffs that you can have right now. Bigsby is a direct handcuff. He caught almost 70 passes while he was at Auburn in his career there. And he's a big back who can catch the ball and he runs well. He broke off a 70-yarder this week. The video was all over Twitter. And yeah, I'm big on Tank Bigsby. I think like it's kind of like the Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet combination, where it's like a really annoying guy to have behind you, because if Bigsby gets the opportunity to start some games, he could be very effective. If ETN misses time though, like Bigsby is going to smash. It's going to be Tank season.
Yeah, I like Tank Bigsby a lot. I think I'm right there with you. I'm taking a lot more Tank than I am ETN because I like, you know, those running backs in that range, like the Najee Harris's. I still like Najee because of the volume, so I'm getting some of them, but those running backs tend to scare me off, and I like to wait and get the David Montgomerys of the world, the Rashad Whites of the world that I can get a few rounds later. So I do, before we forget about this, we do have to run an ad real quick, so hopefully we can it'll be a rapid fire question.
Sneak it in.
We're going to sneak in, and Matt Babich knows me well enough to know that I have a hard time finding these. Here it is. We're going to run a rival ad here because that's the one that I think we need to run some of these. So here's a message from the Podfather about rival fantasy, but don't go anywhere because we're going to figure out which Chiefs wide receiver you need to draft right after this from the OG fantasy himself, Theo Greminger.
Hey, we've got to talk about Rival Fantasy today. Rival Fantasy, they're a huge supporter of everything we do, the podcast channel, the YouTube channel. It's possible because of Rival, and they have an incredible new offer with promo code PLAYER. Promo code PLAYER. You double your deposit up to $200, and you get $25 in bonus bucks. So it's $225 additional to play in NFL preseason. You can do their props on the fantasy book where it's over, under, up to 5 guys. The more over-unders you hit, the higher your payout. And they have their challenges for the community. You can say, hey, I think that player X is going to go over this many fantasy points, and someone takes you up on it. They take the other side. It's great. I love their fantasy bingo, where you can do 5 across, you can do 4 in the corner, black it out, just predicting fantasy points on your favorite players, especially in preseason. The promo code is PLAYER, where they match your deposit up to $200 plus those $25 in bonus bucks. This offer is insane.
All right, so we are back. Rival Fantasy, go check it out today. The question I have for you, Theo, is this the question that's perplexing me because these Chiefs ADPs are all over the place. Like, first it was Tony, then now Tony's dropping off because of the injury, although according to reports, he is expected to be ready for week 1. Now Sky Moore's ADP is rocketing, which I really like Sky Moore from the reports that he was going to take on the slot work, Juju Smith-Schuster's role last season. So how are you navigating this Chiefs wide receiver situation? Are you coming away with a lot of all of them, or is there one target that you're focused on?
So I think that on Underdog, I've been drafting mostly Sky Moore. I think he's been in kind of like that range where wide receiver starts drying up, and he's been kind of like an automatic pick for me on Patrick Mahomes builds. I like him. I think that year 2 could be a year that he takes a step forward. Tony, though, now that he's fallen, it's interesting. Like, he's fallen to a point where he, could return value. I think a couple weeks ago, before he got his knee banged up, he was steaming up to a point where it was going to be hard for him to kind of beat his ADP. I think that there's, like we talked about with the Bears running backs, I think this is kind of like a pick your horse and bet on one of them. Because I think that, like, last year, Juju Smith-Schuster's stats should show you, like, I think Juju was almost complete dust last year, and he was still able to give you a bunch of usable weeks. So I think the fact is one of these or two of these younger wide receivers are going to be, potential guys we can put into our flex. Rashee Rice is interesting too, because they're talking about giving him manufactured touches. And this was a high draft capital guy for them. SMU retired his number like a couple of months ago. I'm like, what a flex. You just left and now they're retiring your number. It's an incredible flex. So I'd say that I probably have the most exposure to Sky Moore, but that's not necessarily because I dislike the other guys. I just like Moore. He's kind of like that combination of, I think he's going to have a floor, and if the role picks up, he could have some spike weeks. So I've liked him the most, certainly in best ball. Redraft, I have not been like pounding the table for Chiefs wide receivers, but I'm definitely open to taking one of them when there's a value presented.
I think I'm in the same boat. I was Sky Moore initially, and now his ADP's to a point where it makes me really nervous. So I'm kind of backing off, and I'm kind of, as much as it might be against the brand, I've kind of been scooping up some Kadarius Toney, as much as he's officially one of my do not draft players in a managed league, but in best ball and Underdog, he's going to give you some of these weeks. I mean, he's going to have a role in that offense for sure. And from what I've been reading, from what I've been seeing at a Chiefs camp, they really like him and what he can do for their offense. So
if you're drafting in 20-man formats, I'll say this: I've seen a couple of very sharp people who have won a lot of money doing a double tap of Kadarius Toney now that he's fallen, and then taking Richie James in like the 18th round. The idea being that if Toney's hurt, Richie James has a path in there. And Richie James, like, it's such a weird one, but I've seen a couple of guys who I really, really respect do that double tap, and you can get Toney now late, and then you could take Richie James for free. And I think that's that kind of an interesting way of playing this weird situation.
Yeah, just to clarify, in best ball formats, I'm in on Kadarius Toney. In a managed league, I don't want, because you're never going to be able to figure out when to play him. In my opinion, he's one of those players, so I'm not touching him in a managed league. But best ball, I'm good where he's going right now. So anyway, I think that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much, Theo, for stepping in here at the last minute and hopping on with me. I really appreciate it. And shout out to the audience too. Thank you for commenting. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to be coming at you with more and more content. We're only going to rev up the engine as the NFL season gets closer, and we're only 30 some days away. So it's going to be here before you know it. College football is going to be here before you know it. So anything you want to plug before we get out of here, Theo?
I want to, Rubio had a good question. I'm not like pounding. I'm drinking a Spindrift seltzer on the show. As much fun as this is. Yeah. We'll look for, I'm dropping 2 press coverages this week. Wednesday, I think 12 noon will be Abib Agbatoba. Talk about the Players Championship on FFPC. Abib has won quite a lot because he's taken down 2 of those as number 1 finisher. He's one of the co-hosts of First and 15. He's a good friend and one of the best players in the whole country. And then I have Scott Barrett of Fantasy Points coming on Friday. I believe we're doing that at 2 p.m. We'll do a tweet about it, but Scott is great. He's one of the sharpest guys in the fantasy industry. He came on First Class Fantasy a couple months ago, and the show was great. Now he's coming on press coverage. So we're dropping a lot. Oh, and Man vs. Machine tomorrow with Dario. I'm recording that. And then I am filling in for Matty Kiwoom. I'm Mr. Fill-In this week. Filling in today for Jack. And then I'm filling in for Matty Kiwoom himself on Trade Gods with Jason this week too. And I'm on the Goat District tomorrow night. So just keep YouTube on. I'm recording at some point.
You're just like Matt Damon. You're like in every movie, you know.
Listen, it's August. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. So that 1st and 15 show, by the way, with Habib,
it's really good.
One of my favorite new shows that we've added, and people need to check it out. Thursdays, I believe at 8 p.m. Central Time is when we drop it.
Yeah.
And so it premieres, they record it. So you be on the lookout for that. That is a very insightful show, especially if you're in redraft, high stakes. It's unbelievable content. You need to go check it out. You can watch my show, The Dynasty Roundtable, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central Time. Go download the podcast too. We had a nice uptick in downloads.
Nice.
We want some more uptick in downloads. So go download the podcast and listen to me in your car. If you can't get enough Seth Dewald in your life, you can go download that. So those are my plugs. Anyway,
can't get enough myself.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. We'll get out of here. But thank you, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we will catch you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.